Well, Miri is a retired colonel of the Israel Defense Forces and a senior fellow today at the International Institute for Counterterrorism. Miri, it's good to have you. Thank you for joining us. You would expect to hear these threats from Iran, but from the Israeli and very specifically IDF perspective at this point, what happens next, to your mind?
First of all, we need to be sure that the threat that Hezbollah has posed with the enormous arsenal that Hassan Nasrallah oversaw both before 2006 and certainly since the Second Lebanon War in 2006, that arsenal, which is right on the border, it's not just underneath the domestic urban areas of Beirut or in the Bekaa Valley, they put it on the border. They were planning to do a kind of October 7th attack. We need to be sure that that threat is removed. And I think that that is the most immediate next aspect for the IDF.
While that arsenal is significant, we are talking about potentially some 130,000 sort of weapons including ballistic missiles, Miri, and that is a significant threat to Israel, being, as you suggest, they are just on the other side of the Israeli border. What we haven't seen or hadn't seen to date from Hezbollah, run by Hassan Nasrallah before his assassination, what we hadn't seen was the significant use of that arsenal. Given his demise and the demise of so many of those commanders around him, assassinated by Israel, what is the ability for Hezbollah at this stage, do you think, to use that arsenal?
So first of all, sorry, I'm going to push back just a bit, Becky. Hezbollah fired at Israel every single day from October 7th. That was not in defense of Lebanon. That was only about attacking Israel. Israelis evacuated 70,000 people that have not been in their homes for 11 and a half months, and Hezbollah has been targeting and destroying those homes. So it's not that they haven't used the arsenal. But what we're looking at right now, when we're looking at the bigger threat, is the chance of how we bring Israelis back home. The city of Kiryat Shmona that you've been in, you reported from there in the past, and that city has been pretty much empty from October 8th. That's when Hezbollah joined into Hamas's attack. And so in that sense, I think that what the IDF and here Israel is trying to do is not just giving a message, and this goes hand in hand with diplomacy, but it's doing an action, because I, Becky, don't know any other way right now to move those arsenals, Radwan forces that were there on the border out of there. I don't know any international force that will do so, and that means that we're going to have to do so.
Yeah, and you're right to point out that there have been, daily strikes by Hezbollah on Israel since October the 8th. My point was the significance of that arsenal at their disposal as a group hasn't been depleted through those attacks and still poses an enormous threat, which is why Israel reserves the right to go in on the ground in order to fulfill its stated goal, which is the return of those tens of thousands displaced on the northern border. The question is that going to happen anytime soon? And if it does, because Israel says it reserves the right, but it has other strategies in its arsenal as well, other potential operations in its arsenal. If it does go in, what does that look like on the ground?
So there is no pretty war. There is no and it's certainly not what I would call a stroll in the park. We're talking, yes, yet again, similar in that sense to the Gaza Strip, of Hezbollah having built over the last decades, from 2006 and before. We already met some of these things in 2006, an underground subterranean arena similar to what Hamas built underneath the Gaza Strip. They have an enormous amount of weaponry that they've built inside the towns and villages. And in that sense, it's going to be booby traps, entrapments. We can be very aware of that. But any kind of ground incursion would go up against that. Having said that, we have learned our lessons. We have been, sadly, for the last 11 months, fighting in that type of environment against Hamas in the Gaza Strip.
You can see the support shared by the United States in defense of Israel's moves in Lebanon against Hezbollah, albeit the states calling for, care and a de-escalation at this point. And of course, as we all understand it, there was a ceasefire proposal, at least, on the table last week in New York, which doesn't seem to be going anywhere at this point. The hope was that that ceasefire proposal, should it be, taken up, would be coupled with some sort of action on a ceasefire and hostage deal in Gaza as well. Do you share the view that these two cannot be decoupled at this point?
First of all, I don't know. I mean, it's like everybody is playing out all of their different aspects. But I do want to address in that sense, for me as an Israeli, and I'm not the prime minister, and this isn't about the government, the heads of the opposition have come out and said that the proposal that at least came out last week was one that I, as an Israeli, could not accept, because it wasn't in any way going to allow the Israelis up north to go back home, meaning it didn't include within it any kind of way that said that Hezbollah's forces, the arsenal, the fighters, all of the different things that we saw that they have used would be moved up north. There was no way for that to have happened. So when I look at it now, and I look at the possibility of degrading Hezbollah's capabilities, the weapons, the arsenals, and the different terrorists on the ground, that actually also has an impact on the southern side, because Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas in the Gaza Strip, the Hamas leaders at least, have very much been empowered by this Hezbollah rhetoric. And the disappearance of the main orator, of Hassan Nasrallah himself, the degrading of Hezbollah's capabilities, which are far stronger than Hamas's capabilities, the degrading, not the disappearance, impacts Hamas's capabilities down south. And so I don't know about decoupling, but to me, it was always clear that you had to address both, and we're addressing both now in a way that we weren't pretty much until 2 weeks ago.
It's fascinating. I mean, it is nuanced. It is complicated. There are so many parties involved in this. Their positioning is different in depending who it is and where. Miri, your perspective, extremely important as we continue to try and understand what is happening now and what certainly might happen next. Miri Eisen, thank you.